So my very first startup was a consulting firm named Hurt Technology Consulting, and I ultimately came out of the consulting field. A great way to start up a business is to do something that you were just doing before for someone else, but do it for yourself. And one of the first test points I wanted to make was whether or not I could make the same rate that I was making working for a large consulting firm, or that they were billing me out at. They were billing me out at like $250 to $350 an hour, and I was getting, less than a tenth of that. And so ultimately I proved that I could do that. And once I proved I could do that, I said, okay, well, now I'm always going to be an entrepreneur, because at least I can, make a good living doing consulting at a bare minimum. But I was looking for a much bigger opportunity than that. So company culture is incredibly important. Ultimately, you've got to make sure that you're being very authentic with yourself as an entrepreneur, and you're launching a business that you truly are passionate about, that you truly feel like it's going to change the world in a positive way, that it's in your bones, you can't stop thinking about it. And then to create a great company culture, the number one thing you need to do is hire people that also feel that way about specifically what you've chosen to focus on and help the world solve. So we developed a test at Bizarre Voice. Brent was my co-founder. From the very first employee, we wanted to make sure that we tested their passion, and we developed this pretty unique approach to doing that. You can read all about it on my blog at lucky7.io. The title of that post is the single most important thing you can do to build a great startup culture, and the answer is the way you hire, because that's your raw material. Then when you hire people that are that amazing, that passionate, great things are going to happen. They're going to, first of all, look around at their peers and say, I can't believe we all got through that process. That was so hard. So that creates a bond. Then it's whether or not it's real in terms of the quality of the people there. And if they feel like these are the best people I've ever worked around, the most passionate people, that's going to naturally bring out good things. They're going to naturally start different tribes. Bizarre Voice, we had tribes start up from P90X to The Biggest Loser to Financial Peace University to yoga tribes, cooking tribes. All different types of people expressing personal passions and really bonding with each other. And that's a beautiful thing, because we spend more time working than doing anything else. We spend more time working than we ultimately do with our families. And so if you can hire people that are truly passionate about what they're doing and they express that, then as the CEO of a company like that, the number one job you have is to cheer that on and encourage it, rather than, you could immediately kill something like that if you walked around. It's like, what are you guys doing? Get back to work. Then people would be just fleeing, because now that authentic environment you set up is not authentic anymore. So it's incredibly important. People, if they're passionate about what they're doing, and they have peers that are also passionate, are going to naturally service clients better. They're going to naturally develop product better. They're going to naturally sell the product better. So it makes everything easier. Business doesn't actually have to be hard. I love to spend time with my family. We have 2 kids, aged 11 and 6, and it's pretty amazing how they're shaping up as little people. I've been married almost 20 years. My wife Deborah and I celebrate our 20 years in June, and so we spend a lot of time together. I love to read. I'm involved in the Henry Crown Fellowship, which is part of the Aspen Institute, and that's really had a big impact on me. Spent a lot of time talking with my fellows about all different types of leadership challenges, societal problems that ultimately, hopefully, we can all address together in the future. And so I love constantly developing as a leader, not just specifically in that one business, but just broadly as a leader. When you become a successful leader, one of the most important things to realize is that now you have an obligation back to society. It's not just about your business, it's about how can you help overall society How can you make statements that, and through your actions, that help people rise up and become successful themselves? And that type of society can be a very beautiful place. And Austin is very unique in the sense that everybody here, for the most part that you meet, is genuinely trying to help each other. That's in the Austin ethos, and that's one of the things that people find when they move here. When people move here from New York or California, one of the things they're kind of shocked by in a very positive way is how helpful people are. Well, that's in general how I think society should be, not just Austin. And there are entire countries like that, by the way. Like New Zealand, for example, actually rates #1 in the entire world on quality of life index. And part of it is that you go to New Zealand and people are like, "Would you like to stay at my house with me tonight? Cook you dinner." And it's a beautiful place. So I think that that's in the roots of us as Americans too, and we need to remind ourselves how lucky we are and how much we can rise up and help each other. So my mother was a very unique influence in my life, because when I got my first computer system or game, Pong, when I was 4 years old or whatever year that was, I was really fascinated about what was going on behind the scenes and wanted to take it apart. And my mom saw that, and ultimately, when the first computers came out that she could program on, I was 7 years old, and she bought one for me along with my grandfather. And they thought it would get me into math, and that indeed was the first thing I did. I did my math homework on, wrote programs to do my math homework for me, and ultimately grew up spending over 40 hours a week on the computer programming from age 7 to 21. So it was a very unusual childhood. I was lucky to be in Austin for that, because Austin had computer clubs, and my mom would drop me off, and I would spend all this time with teenagers and young adults programming. And we were all big-time nerds, and I got picked on a lot as a kid, including by some teachers. One of my teachers, when I was in second grade, pulled my mom aside and said, "I think your son's going to be hopelessly lost. All he talks about is the computer, and he doesn't know how to do anything else." And my mom was very offended at that. Didn't tell me until I was an adult. Actually, didn't tell me until I became a successful adult, in her definition. And that, that was kind of amazing if you think about it, the fact that she was able to realize that I was passionate and keep everybody else out of my way. So how do I apply that to our kids, and how do I think parents should apply that? Well, first of all, I think your most important job as a parent is to have as little judgment as possible about what your kids' passions truly are. And try to find out what they're passionate about. Your job as a parent is to expose them to lots of different things. Ultimately, tune into their frequency, not your own frequency, but their frequency. You're not trying to live, your foregone life through them. You're trying to ultimately find out what makes them uniquely special. And everybody's born to do something unique. So you need to tune into that frequency, expose them to quite a few things until you find out the thing that they just naturally do and love, with no prodding or pushing. They just naturally fall into it. And then give them as much resources as you can for that. If there's clubs around that, bring them to those clubs. If there's online resources around that, show them how to get access to those online resources. And then just let them do it. Don't have that pressure from other parents where it's like, well, gosh, your son or daughter isn't in the 5 activities that my kid is. Doesn't matter. Those 5 activities, yes, you learn teamwork. There's some things that you learn in those. But if you're lucky enough to have a child that at a young age finds out what they're passionate about, then realize that you're very blessed in that, and you should ultimately help them stoke that ambition, and surround them with resources. Now, most people maybe don't find their passion until they're adults. That's fine too. But if you're lucky enough to have a child that has passion about something, and then let them do it. That's what I learned from my mom. For me, it was never about the money. As a matter of fact, growing up as a kid, it was not clear to really, I think, anybody at that time, if you're really honest about it, that there was going to be a lot of money in the computer field. It's easy to say that kind of thing in hindsight. It's always easy to say, oh, well, I knew that that's not true. So what keeps me going is that I'm doing exactly the work I love to do at 44 now than I was doing when I was a kid. So it's the same thing. I ultimately believe technology is the greatest force to change the world for the better. My sixth business, I think, is going to have a huge impact, data.world. And ultimately, what a beautiful thing to be able to breathe the soul of a new life into a new being, in this case a company, a collective of individuals, and allow that to flourish and expose itself in the world and hopefully grow into a very successful adult as a company. That there's nothing, in my opinion, more beautiful than you can do it in business. I mean, in the past, from my past businesses, this is my sixth business, I had clients like Nike, for example. And I remember going up to Nike and reading on the plane, Swoosh, the unauthorized biography of Nike, and thinking to myself, I wonder how many people at Nike know how humble it was that Phil Knight was selling shoes out of the back of his car at track meets. And now you go and there's like free daycare and there's, tracks all over the place and, gyms and, it's crazy, campus. I mean, it's beautiful, right? They've earned that. And there's so few people that actually know that that's where all businesses start. They all start with those humble beginnings and with someone that was truly passionate. And what a beautiful thing, right? The whole country, our whole country, we're by far and away the world's largest GDP. China's number 2 now, but less than half our size. And this country was built by amazing entrepreneurs expressing their passions, and I feel like it's a time where we should be incredibly bullish on America, incredibly bullish on Austin. I think this is the best venture capital bet as a city outside of Silicon Valley over the next 10 years. And so what a beautiful time to be alive, where we have all this amazing technology coming into our lives, making our quality of life, frankly, better. This is the best time to be alive ever. There's no one that would go back 50 years ago, on any dimension. Like if you're a woman 50 years ago, very hard. This is the best time to be alive and have a career as a woman. If you were African American 50 years ago, very hard. And that's true across the board. If in my small case, if you're a computer nerd, in the 70s, very hard. Growing up here in Texas, but ultimately, it's the best time to be alive and do great things.